Welcome to episode 4. We'd left off the last episode here, where we had created some cool looking planets, but had no way to use them. If you missed that episode, you might want to watch that one first. I'll put a link in the description. As I was saying, we had these cool looking planets, but all we were creating was a block of data our game couldn't understand. We now need to use that data in the procedural generation algorithm to create those worlds in-game. To start with, I just want to get some of the data we have from the world gem maps and use it in the world. You may remember from episode 1 that we had a few different types of chunks corresponding to our base shape, the icosahedron. Corner, the pentagons, edge, a one block wide chunk that connects all the corners together, and faces, the vast majority of chunks. Since face chunks are the main type of chunk, I'm going to get them working first, and we'll come back later and solve the other special cases. I have added some placeholder functions. The world gen data is at a per chunk resolution and stored in one long list. So the first job is use the chunk's location to calculate the index of the world gen data we need. Edge length here refers to the number of chunks between each corner of our icosahedron, and will change depending on our planet size. But we can use this to multiply out our world gen data index. Using that index, we read the depth from the stored world gen data. If you remember from last episode, this is a number that tells us the distance from the shore. Now, stepping through every x and y coordinate in the chunk, we use the depth to calculate the height of the terrain and multiply by the chunk size, so we should go up by 1 meter of elevation for every 1 meter we travel away from the shore. Then we work our way through the z-axis, making every voxel less or equal to the height as grass, and every one that is higher, air. That is enough to get started. Let's load a world and see if it works. It is very blocky, but it seems to be loading the data just fine. As we go from the shore, each chunk is higher as expected. We can see a gap with the edge chunks, but that's to be expected too, as we didn't write any code for them. As much as this is cool to look at, using the data at a per chunk level creates these steps in the data which are clearly visible. What we actually want is to smooth the data at a per voxel level so we get gradual changes and nice slopes. This diagram will help us visualize the problem. Imagine these are our chunks. Like in the game, they are rhombus in shape. I've marked out an island. The depth map just counts how many chunks from the coast each chunk is. So let's add that data. 0, 1, 2. Now I'm going to add some color to each number to make it more obvious. You can see, like with the world we were just in, there are sharp changes between chunks. Now, if instead of making the data points be per chunk, what if instead they were per chunk corner, like this? Then, instead of each voxel inside a chunk taking the value for the chunk, let's lerp the data using the voxel's position inside the chunk to determine the weights of each corner's influence. Let's visualize how that will affect the world by using the same colors again, but now lerping the colors with the corner weights. This is what we need. Time to go back to the code and try and implement this. Instead of just getting the single data index, I'm now getting 4 indices corresponding to the 4 corners of a chunk, labeled here A, B, C, and D. This getDepthAverage function calculates the weight of each corner for the voxel and gives us a local depth value, which we will then treat the same way as before. Back to the game, and all the steps are gone. We have nice smooth chunks giving us some crazy terrain. This is working great, and we can now use this technique to sample our other data maps we generated to create the terrain we are really looking for. Still ignoring biomes for now, I want to get the different types of topology working. If we look back at the topology maps, I want to get this world working with the seed number 10 so I compare the data to the generated world. In the game we spawn in this region currently, so if we head south we should cross over the mountains, find the ocean and have 2 hilly islands to look out across the water at. Looks like a good test. In the code I have this new function getTopologyAverage. It works the same way as getDepthAverage, but returns the topology stored as a float. We can then use the getRelief function to calculate the terrain height. In the future I'm going to change how this all works, as this method won't give us overhangs and cool stuff like that, but it's good enough for the time being. This function uses the depth to work out if we're in the ocean or on the land, then uses the topology float to calculate which type of topology to generate. The cutoff values can be tweaked, and in the future I plan to make ways to tweak all these settings with controllable inputs instead of these different functions, but again, this is good enough for what we need just now. As a side note, I've had a lot of people ask questions about the world size. It can be anything from about 16 meters radius to the size of Jupiter. However, I'll probably put a reasonable upper limit to the worlds, as if they get too large, you might as well be on a flat plane, because the worlds will be too large to meaningfully explore. In our test, the world had the seed of 10 and a radius of 1000. The world loads very quickly, and here are the chunks popping in. Let's fly up so we can inspect and see if everything is in the right place. Looks like we're over some flatter lands as expected. And then there are the mountains. Now we can all see a big issue to start with. There's this huge cliff face. But let's fly south and see if at least we're using the right type of biomes at the right place. Those mountains are huge and very spiky. Let's fly further up. Now, if you remember correctly, we should be coming down to the coastline, and there should be some islands. I think I can see one island there. And there's the second island. Perfect. And these should have a hilly area and a flat area, which looks like they do. So it looks like the topology is transferring correctly from our world data into the world. We're just having this issue at the joins between the different generation types are very abrupt. We need to smooth them out. To get rid of those hard transitions, we need to smooth the topology between types. This can be done by lerping between the 2 different topology types. I have added a lerp here for the transition between flat land and hills, and also one here between hills and mountains. Here we are back in the world, and we can instantly see that those horrible transitions are gone and it's nice and smooth. In fact, the transitions between those flat lands and these mountainous ranges is actually quite nice now. Let's fly up through the mountains and see if we still have our 2 islands at the other side. Oh, we're getting some heavy lag spikes here. This is actually an issue that I'll fix in a future video. It was an oversight to do with how the game decided which chunks to load. You may also notice at the minute that the chunks are kind of loading randomly still, not like what's closest to the player. That's also fixed in a future update. And here we're at the coastline. Coastline's looking a lot better. We don't have those high cliff faces anymore. And we'll just wait for those islands to load in. It's quite fun to look around this world now. You can imagine if we added some cool biomes to these areas that they might actually start to look a bit special. And there's one of the islands and there's the other, so we haven't broken anything. That's great. Now that this all works, it's time to add the biomes. I have created this enum for biomes. This list covers a large range of biomes, but I'm sure we'll add more in the future. The getBiome function works slightly differently to the getTopologyAverage and getDepthAverage functions, as you can't have the average of an enum like you can with a float. It has to be a distinct biome. However, I still want nice transitions between biomes. I don't want a hard border of biome change between two chunks. Instead, I'm also using a weighting function which will randomly pick one of the corners biomes, but with a higher chance given to closer corners. This should give us a dappling effect between biomes. In the future, I also plan to change block colors dependent on biome variables, such as humidity. This will also help smooth transitions, but that is out of scope for just now. The selected biome is then used in the generate biome function, which will switch between which biome to generate. I have only written grassland and desert biomes, so let's just set everything to one of those for just now. The grasslands function will place grass at the surface with dirt below, followed by rock. It also uses a hashing function to have a low chance to place some trees. So here we load into the world. See the biomes come in. Oh, this is great. We have a biome transition right here. We can see the dappling between the two biomes. That seems to be working nicely. In the desert, we should get some cactuses now and then. I can see a little cactus there. See a cactus over there in the distance. In the grasslands, we should get trees every so often. So yeah, there's some trees. Looks to be a nice amount. Let's go over here, have a look at this transition. Okay, so that seems quite nice. We're getting this lovely dappling effect between the two. Now, under grass, we should dig down and we should find dirt. That seems to be working. And then under that, there should be rock eventually. See if we can dig. There's the rock. Perfect. Grass should be sandstone underneath it, I think. So yeah, we've got some sand. And then go down a bit. Oh, yeah, and there's our sandstone. So that is working nicely. Let's go back to the code and start adding some more biomes. Time to add some woodlands biomes. I want to add a taiga biome now, as this seems like fun. We've created these cool trees with the structure editor with quite a lot of variations for the generator to choose from. I wanted tree placement to be random, but not too random, as in a forest, trees tend to be spread relatively evenly. A tree will starve the light of its surrounding area, preventing new trees from growing too close, and likewise, if there is a gap in the forest, a seed will grow there and make a new tree filling in the space. My first thought was to just use Perlin noise, as it does have predictable periodic features. However, it's too hard to prevent two trees occasionally spawning right next to each other. We need something a little more grid-based. My idea is to split up the world into 6x6 areas, then randomly choose a spot in a 4x4 area inside that 6x6. This way, there has to be at least a 2-unit space between trees, and trees will hopefully still feel very random and natural. A hashing function is then used to decide which tree type to spawn, and we can play with the odds of each tree type. Here we are spawning into our taiga world. And it looks quite good at first glance. We can see our different tree heights. They're spawning different types of trees nicely. And nothing seems to be too close together. We have now a dappled forest floor. It's quite nice to see the shadows moving now. We've got objects and we can really tell the sun's moving. Yeah, you can't see any grid-like repetition, which I was slightly worried about. That seems to be fine. Let's see if we can find any trees that are too close together. In theory, there should never be more than 2. That's close, but it's still more than 2. Well, these 2 look close. How many is that? 1, 2, they're 3 apart. Oh, here we go. I think this is as close as they can possibly be. Yeah, they're 2 apart. So that's an example of how close they can get. Let's finish off here with me running through some of the taiga biome. There is definitely a lot more to do with generation and biomes, but next episode we're going to look at some new block types. If you're enjoying this series, don't forget to subscribe here on YouTube and add PlanetSmith to your Steam wishlist. Links are in the description. This is one of the best ways you can support PlanetSmith. We also have a Discord where you can find other people excited about PlanetSmith, and this is the best place to ask me questions or share your ideas. I would like to give a big shout out to our new members. Your support really helps, especially for making these videos. We are halfway to our 10,000 subscriber goal. Once we hit that, I'll be announcing a way everyone will be able to play a demo and my plans for the future of PlanetSmith. Thanks for watching. I'll see you all in the next video.